This is the fourth of four videos. We focused on John 19, verses 1 through 16. This last video is kind of an illustration. I want you to, or introduce you to, a movie entitled A Hidden Life by the director Terrence Malick. Obviously, I'm not going to show you the whole movie, and I highly recommend that you see the movie. It is available now. But I'll show you the trailer. But let me tell you about this movie slash trailer, and in particular, the reason why I think it is so appropriate for us here and an illustration of what we've talked about is because the questions that are raised have in this movie have to do with the sovereignty of God and the free will of man. This movie is inspired by true events. So this guy, this star, Franz Jagerstatter, was a real person, and he really was a conscientious objector. He is Austrian, takes place in Austria. Beautiful cinematography in this movie. And they start off, and you'll see this in the trailer, showing him and his early life and his romance and marriage to this young woman and the start of his young family and this rather idyllic life in this small Austrian village. World War II starts, Germany occupies Austria, and Jägerstatter is conscripted to serve in the military. He refuses to serve, particularly because he is going to be required to sign a pledge of allegiance to Hitler, which he says his conscience just will not allow him to do. He stands virtually alone. His wife is supporting him, but even his own mother thinks he's being foolish. The town has turned against him. And of course, the Nazis are threatening to kill him if he doesn't sign the allegiance and serve. Everyone is against him. He's considered being arrogant, foolish, hurtful toward other people. His family's going to suffer. The town's going to suffer if he continues with his defiance. They tell him it is not God's will. Franz Jägerstatter is a very devout Catholic and very concerned about God's will. They say he's wrong. He believes he's doing God's will by not signing the Pledge of Allegiance. Others tell him no. So he's not considered a hero. He's considered a traitor. Here are some of the arguments that are raised against his actions in the movie. He's told by the church, from whom he seeks divine guidance in God's will, that he has a duty to the fatherland, and he should fulfill that. The town mayor, I think it is, accuses him of being arrogant. You think you're better than the rest of us in your defiance. We're not as good as you. Everyone should stand up to this. You're just being arrogant. He's called a traitor. He's betrayed his family. He's betrayed his town. He's betrayed his country. And again, because of his actions, a lot of suffering is going to come on his family and even the town that he's in. The mayor, I think it is also, who says to him, Jesus wants us to love people. Doesn't he want us to love? And by what you're doing, you're not loving your family. You're not loving the town. You're not loving people. You're bringing harm on them. One of the German interrogators tells him, look, what you're doing, it's not going to make any difference. The war is going to go on. No one is going to know what you've done. It makes no difference. It's worthless. There's no point to it. And finally, just before he's going to be executed, he's with his wife and a priest, and they're imploring him, especially the priest, to sign the Pledge of Allegiance. And he tells him, look, God knows what's in your heart. God knows that you are not pledging allegiance to Hitler. Just sign the pledge for the good of your family, and God will forgive you. Very powerful arguments brought against him. Now, I want to show you the trailer. It's about a 2-minute trailer, and then I'll talk to you again. Please listen and watch carefully.
Remember the day when we first met? I remember that motorcycle, my best dress. You looked at me, and I knew how simple life was then.
What's happened to our country?
We're killing innocent people,
Raiding other countries, preying on the weak.
if our leaders, if they're evil, what does one do?
You have a duty to the fatherland. The church tells you so.
You cannot say no to your race and your hope. You are a traitor.
I can't swear loyalty to Hitler. I can't.
Do you think your defiance will change the course of things?
If God gives us free will, we're responsible for what we do, what we fail to do. I can't do what I believe is wrong. We have to stand up to evil.
Whatever you do, I'm with you. Always.
I hope you caught one of the key verses in that trailer, one of the key things that Jägerstätter says in that movie, and which I think the director Terrence Malick is the very question that he's raising regarding the free will of man and the sovereignty of God. Jägerstätter says, if God gives us free will, we're responsible for what we do or what we fail to do. If God gives us free will, then we're responsible for what we do. Jägerstätter intends to live what he believes. What we live is what we believe. We're used to thinking that what we believe is what's in our head, or maybe even what we say we believe. But the truth of the matter is, what we live is what we believe. In James's letter, he says this, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Can such faith save them?" Don't think of being saved as, well, will I get into heaven one day? Think of salvation and being saved as being transformed into a child of God, into the likeness of Jesus Christ, to live a godly, God-glorifying life. Can such faith that is only in my head or in my heart but doesn't transform my life, can it save me? Will it transform me? No, of course not. Real faith is what we live. Jägerstätter says, I can't do what I believe is wrong. We have to stand up to evil. Now, I think you could get the impression that Jägerstätter, his primary motivation is simply that it is wrong to sign the Pledge of Allegiance. We must do the right thing. It is inherently right to stand up to evil. It is inherently wrong to give in to evil. But that is not his primary motive. His primary motive, the reason he refuses to sign the pledge, is because of what God calls him to do. The refusal to sign the Pledge of Allegiance to Hitler, he cannot do it because God will not allow him to do that. He must be obedient to God. He is accountable to God for what he does. That's his motive. If God gives us free will, we're responsible for what we do or what we fail to do. He is living by faith in God. If I was going to write the dialogue, to make this clear, here's what I would write. This is what Jägerstätter would say. I will not sign the pledge because of my belief in God. Because I believe he gives us free will, and therefore I am responsible to him to do his will, to obey him. You see, I fear God more than anyone or anything. You see, I love God more than anyone or anything. It is wrong for me to sign the pledge because I would be disobeying God, and I will not do that. My action may be meaningless in this world at this time, but it is not meaningless before God and in eternity. I will not betray God. And because I know that God is sovereign over all things, and that all things work together for his glory and good purposes, I trust him, and I know that what I do, according to the will of God, is what is ultimately good, right, best, and loving, and therefore meaningful. Was what Jägerstätter did, was it meaningful? Did it matter? He was executed. His life was largely a hidden life, known by very few. He's not a noted, he's not a Dietrich Bonhoeffer, largely unnoticed. His life didn't change any events. It didn't make any difference in the prosecution of the war. Was it worthwhile? His wife was widowed. His children were orphaned. They were ostracized in the village they lived in. Was it worthwhile? I think from a sight perspective, from a worldly perspective, it probably was meaningless. It inspired a movie, but it was largely a meaningless life. But from an eternal perspective, from a God perspective, from the perspective of faith, it had infinite value. Paul lived a similar life to Jägerstätter. He endured a lot of suffering. Was it worthwhile? What motivated him? Here's some of the things that Paul wrote. If indeed we share in his, that is Christ's sufferings, we may also share in his glory. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. For we live by faith, not by sight. So we make it our goal to please him, that is God, whether we are at home in the body or away from it. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. It would be a mistake for us to think that Jägerstätter was somebody unique or extraordinary, or that Paul was. The point of Paul's letter, the point that Paul was making when he was writing to the Romans or to the Philippians or to the Corinthians, was that we are all called to live by faith. The life of faith is the true life, is the only life that is life. Jägerstätter and Paul, their choice was stark. In many ways, it would be easier for us if a Nazi soldier came up and put a gun to our head and said, either sign this pledge to deny Christ or die. I think we live in a much more dangerous time, a much more difficult time when nobody is putting a gun to our head. But our culture is working on us again and again to live by sight and not by faith. The choice we face to live by faith and not by sight is no less serious and no less necessary for us. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it." If God gives us free will, we're responsible for what we do or what we fail to do.